Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a moment. Thanks for being here today. We're going to give it just a moment as people are coming in, and really appreciate you making time during your lunch break to be here. I'm Jess Sims. I'm the Virginia Field Coordinator for Appalachian Voices, and I am excited to be here today with y'all and with Grace Tuttle, the Advocacy Director of the POWHR Coalition.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Glad to be here with you.
And today's event is being recorded, so just know that if you missed something or need to go back to it, we're going to send you all of the resources that we shared today and the recording link as soon as we're done. So you can share that as a tool with others. And we're really appreciative that you're here today to participate in a national call-in day to stop the polluter giveaway. And today's program is primarily going to be focused on Senator Manchin's new bill. But there's unfortunately a lot of efforts across the federal sphere that are part of that polluter giveaway. So we'll be talking about those today. So again, Jessica Sims, Field Coordinator with Appalachian Voices. Want to give you just a little bit of info on what we're going to cover today. You should have access to the chat, so please put your questions in there. We'll answer some as the program goes along, and we'll have some time at the end of the program for that too. But again, we're back. We're here to give a federal update, what's happening congressionally that would impact our important environmental laws, our bedrock environmental protections, and that revamped and resurfaced congressional attempts to move Mountain Valley Pipeline forward to circumvent its normal review laws and to try and move that harmful project forward. So we're going to talk federal, we're going to talk new bills, we're going to give a quick update on where Mountain Valley Pipeline stands in terms of permits, and then we've got a call to action to do during today's lunchtime webinar, which we expect to last until about 12:45, so we can give you back a little bit of your lunchtime. And then we are going to have a call to action with a phone call. We've got a great toolkit that Grace has developed and some next steps that your help is needed on this week as we continue to fight efforts to undermine NEPA, the Clean Water Act, and to push Mountain Valley Pipeline forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Grace to talk about what some of the historical and recent events in the congressional sphere have how they've led to now.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining. As many of you know, I'm Grace Tuttle. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Advocacy Director with POWHR Coalition. And I am going to walk us through just a handful of the past events, as well as what's going on right now in the House and Senate. In collaboration with Jess. And as many of you know, because many of you here were instrumental to these efforts last year. So thank you. This is just a recap. And if anyone is joining us for the first time or is new to this fight, welcome. Just, you can learn some of the context and then jump right in, and we're really glad to have you. So what happened last time? This fight was referred to in 2022 as the dirty deal because it involved a deal between Senator Manchin and Democratic leadership in order to secure his vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA, that he would be granted a slew of polluter and fossil fuel giveaways, including construction and operation of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So this dirty deal has essentially been termed permitting reform, which we have in quotes, and we generally want to avoid describing it as permitting reform unless we're using that kind of facetious quoting, because we don't want to give into that messaging. And we have thus far defeated the dirty deal 4 times. Is that right, Jessica? I think we're on track for a 5th here. And as we know, in September 2022, Senator Manchin was unable to secure enough votes to keep his then called the Energy Independence and Security Act, bill attached to the continuing resolution. So he was attempting to attach it to a series of must-pass legislative vehicles that had to be passed in order to keep the government functioning. So he tried that tactic a variety of times. In December 2022, he attempted to make another deal with Speaker Pelosi to attach his act to the NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act. That also failed. Two further efforts also failed, and importantly, want to note that President Biden and his administration continue to explicitly support Senator Manchin's legislative attempts here, quote unquote, permitting reform or deregulation and completion of the MVP. So thanks, Jess. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a hideous slide full of the talking points from HR 1, which has passed the House. I won't go through all of this. We can link a fact sheet for y'all to check out the text of this extremely harmful bill that has passed the House. It was declared dead on arrival in the Senate, but of course, this particular version was declared dead on arrival, but many other very harmful pieces of legislation are being cooked up in the Senate, including by Democrats, like Senator Manchin. So this piece of legislation, for example, would shut every agency out but FERC, save for FERC, out of new natural gas pipeline permitting. It would remove the requirement that LNG exports have to be in the public interest before they can be approved. It has some pretty horrible mining provisions in it, which would allow basically anyone to mine anywhere on public lands for very cheap. It does not enhance tribal consultation in any way. It severely limits legal challenges to unlawful permit decisions. It curtails public participation. It grants critical energy resource facilities amnesty from federal, state, and local environmental laws. It allows PFAS chemicals on the market with no regulation, shortens NEPA reviews, undermines the Clean Water Act Section 401 provisions, which allows states and tribes to protect their waters, which North Carolina has deployed twice in opposition to the MVP Southgate. Importantly, and it would repeal billions of dollars in clean energy policies from the IRA. Among many other things. So we'll put in a cheat sheet there in the chat. And Jess, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is something that is developing. We just want to mention it here because it's part of the context, and it is sort of another form of must-pass legislation in order to avert an economic catastrophe. We have to raise the debt ceiling, and around June 1st. In June, you can expect this sort of controversy to heat up. The House majority has now passed the quote unquote Default on America Act, which cuts many vital services. It repeals almost every benefit and tax incentive from the IRA, and it just is full of handouts to the fossil fuel industry. So the majority of the House is trying to raise the debt ceiling while cutting, sorry, this slide has an error in it, forgive my Monday brain, cut critical funding. They want to slash environmental and community protections and clean energy investments. So leadership on both sides of Senate and House and President Biden need to stand strong against those demands. So just keep an eye out for this becoming a potential area where deregulation and forced completion of the MVP could crop up. We're not exactly sure how or if it could be attached, but just it's important to keep in mind because there are sort of many balls in the air right now. Next slide, Jess. Let's see. I might be frozen or Jess might be frozen. So I'm just going to hang out for a sec. Oh, looks like Jess was frozen. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Bear with me, y'all. Okay, so Can everyone see that? Can anyone give me a plus in the chat or something? Thank you. Wonderful people. Okay. We're going to continue here. I'm sure Jess will come back on when her internet allows. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So sorry for another slide with a ton of text on it. There's a lot happening in the Senate right now. There have been a slew of recent hearings in the Environment and Public Works Committee and the Environment and Natural Resources Committees. On April 26th, Senator Carper, who leads the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, had a hearing titled Opportunities to Improve Project Reviews for a Cleaner and Stronger Economy. This hearing focused a lot on transmission, electric transmission, and the need for the purported need for reform in order to permit those gigantic projects. And yet again, NEPA is, of course, not the roadblock for transmission projects, but is being targeted in those reforms as well. On May 2nd, Senator Manchin questioned Interior Secretary Deb Haaland about not meeting leasing deadlines on public lands, even though the Biden administration is approving so many fossil fuel projects. So that was just a really unfortunate hearing, and Secretary Haaland was treated very poorly by many senators on that committee. On May 4th, Senator Manchin again, and he is the head of ENR in Environment and Public Works. Senator Manchin questioned FERC commissioners, all four sitting FERC commissioners, about quote unquote the future of coal in the US electric grid, the need to consider reliability when bringing new energy resources onto the grid, the pace of FERC decision-making, and the need for comprehensive bipartisan energy permitting reform that includes transmission. So basically, this hearing was validation for Senator Manchin that FERC admitted that coal needs to be part of the US electric grid, and that we cannot retire apparently or allegedly coal and extremely polluting facilities. It was another sort of hate on renewables hearing, and all sorts of other really destructive things. And the committee basically urged Manchin basically urged FERC to approve as much natural gas and electric infrastructure as possible. So another very negative hearing. And there is another bill, I hate to be the bearer of this news, co-sponsored, co-written by Senators Barrasso and Capito, titled the Restart Act, very similar to HR 1. It imposes strict time limits on environmental reviews and legal challenges. It prevents projects from being blocked by states that deny or delay a Clean Water Act 401 permit. Again, North Carolina did this. It would prevent their authority to do that in the future if it were to pass. It codifies Trump's definition of waters of the US and sets boundaries for when dredge and fill and discharge permits are required under the Clean Water Act. It shortens the timelines of Endangered Species Act consultation, prohibits the social cost of greenhouse gas reviews, and requires agencies to issue all remaining authorizations to force the completion and operation of the Mountain Valley Pipeline within 21 days if it is passed. Additionally, the full Senate ENR committee will hold another hearing on Thursday, May 11th, that's this Thursday, at 10 a.m. To basically discuss quote unquote permitting reform, which is, we know, is deregulation and gutting of community voices, and forcing completion of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So Jess, I think you're back. That's wonderful. Let me see if we could possibly switch screen sharing duties again.
Yeah, and apologies for that. I'm
unneeded.
Having some communication problems. Can you hear me, Grace?
I sure can, and I can see the screen, and just let me know if there's anything else I can do.
Okay, so sorry about that. And if I become too difficult to hear, I might have to switch back to you, Grace. But as Grace shared, there's unfortunately a lot of collective bipartisan efforts to do more disguised permitting reform. And we know this is really deregulation. And so since Senator Manchin's recent goings on last congressional session, he is
Oops.
he has,
Jess, we
and he
cannot
is
hear
now pushing back.
Say one more thing, Jess. Sorry, I couldn't hear you for like 10 seconds.
Sure. I think that I'm going to mute. And if you could maybe do a little bit of talking about this slide, I'll just run the slideshow.
Sure. And I'm so sorry that the tech is not working. Absolutely. Thanks y'all for bearing with us. It's always something with Zoom, as we know. Okay. All right. So apologies. I was deep in our notes document and technical things. So I'm a little lost as to where Jess is, but I think in this slide, but I'm just going to sort of pick back up with the reintroduction of the Building American Energy Security Act. And I think that we have that detailed on the next slide. So if that's all right with you, Jess, we'll just go straight to there. And awesome. Okay. So much like the other really harmful pieces of legislation that I've already shared a little bit about, this is very similar. It's also very similar to Senator Manchin's previous attempts to pass this legislation that we sort of looked over from last year that y'all helped defeat. And oops, let's see. I'm going to pull this up again. Thank you. So sorry, everyone. Okay. Very similar to last year's attempts, and the MVP section of his bill instructs the Fish and Wildlife Service to deliver a biological opinion, a valid biological opinion, which they have already done. So it's not even accurate. So yeah, this includes a variety of deregulation methods. It shortens timeframes. It limits scope of regulation. It curtails legal timelines. It interferes with public input in a variety of ways. It includes a laundry list of fossil fuel and extractive industry giveaways. We return to that concept that we saw in the fall of projects of strategic or national importance that are exempted from various regulations, and it also expands eligibility for streamlining projects and programs from NEPA and other key protective laws. And of course, just like Senator Capito's bill, this would mandate congressional approval of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is, of course, unprecedented. It grants previously vacated and outstanding permits, and it would eliminate judicial review or judicial due process, which is a right of the people and part of our democratic processes. So obviously, this is a huge issue that has bipartisan cooperation this Senate session. So this is just a synopsis of what's in Manchin's latest Building American Energy Security Act. We'll link the text in the chat. And let's see,
I am back, Grace.
Yay! Okay.
Okay, I'm on a new connection, y'all. So thanks to our gracious Grace who handled that so well. So I'm gonna reshare. Appreciate you. I'm going to go back to the slide you were on, and let me know if that's visible. But just want to reiterate that, Manchin losing last session has seemingly left him very embittered. And so when my sound was going out, talking about he's coming out against the IRA in some ways and provisions of that. So he has made all of this a very political process and is trying to push this pet project forward and use the IRA as a bargaining chip in continued attempts this year, just like he did last year. So just want to give a couple MVP updates because we saw the same MVP provisions are in Manchin's new version of the Building American Energy and Security Act. And so where are we right now? Just want to reiterate, they are using this as a type of tool to push this harmful project through because they know it cannot be built safely and without breaking environmental protections. And so the project remains only 56% complete to full restoration. There are 429 water crossings that have not been crossed and cannot be crossed because they are missing now both state and federal authorizations. As of today, May 8th, they do not have authorizations from the Forest Service or Bureau of Land Management, nor the Army Corps of Engineers. They recently lost their state 401 Clean Water Act permit from West Virginia. And that's significant because if you don't have the 401, you can't grant the federal component, the 404. We know the project would be harmful. We've got some information on there about greenhouse gas emissions. We know it's not necessary for grid reliability or national security, that the demand for gas is stagnant. And although this is kind of including in some of their reasoning, some of the proponents of this, that it could be used for hydrogen, that's not something you can just swap one out for the other. So lots of falsehoods about what this project could mean. And then want to flag too, adding to the overall volatility of both projects, Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate is still without its state level permits, and they're about to have their FERC certificate expire. So this is a project that is on its way out, and they are trying any attempt to get it through, including bending laws, avoiding environmental protections, just to make that possible. So now we're looking at, in this new congressional session, it's May 8th, what happens now? And I'll put that back to you, Grace.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. So what happens now is familiar to probably everyone on this call. We are going to have to unite together and remember our collective power and how many times we have beat this incredibly harmful proposal in a variety of resurrected forms before. We can do it again. And we did this by uniting all the frontline fights together. We rallied around the no sacrifice zones rallying cry. And this new attempt is absolutely explicitly an attempt to continue creating sacrifice zones. So Jess is just reminding us of some of our photos of our incredible collective efforts from the fall, our people power, our no sacrifice zones SOP MVP rally, where we were graciously joined by many other frontline fights in the attempt to stop the dirty deal. So we sort of know the lay of the land here. And we have a variety of tactics that are available to us. Jess is going to detail these a little more, but just in the spirit of remembering our collective power, we're going to call in today, as we've talked about. We have this toolkit that we can share with you. We have an action alert from App Voices. You can attend this hearing on Thursday virtually or in person if you're able to. You can tweet during it, just kick up some noise, post on social media. There's so many different things you can do, and Jess is going to detail those. And again, just a reminder from the last fight or round of fights, your calls, your letters, your messages, your meetings, everything works. It really, really works. We're able to move people on this issue, garner support, unite, and we're super powerful when we unite as one movement together. With our common agenda of advancing environmental justice, stopping sacrifice zones, and a just transition, which is really the opposite of what these proposals are enacting. They would make us, reliant, dependent on the fossil fuel industries for decades to come. And of course, all of the egregious just egregious provisions that we've outlined in the completion of the MVP. So just a couple of examples. Last year, more than 54 members of Congress expressed concern about attaching the dirty deal and to the NDAA. 12 members of Congress pledged that they would vote no on attaching the dirty deal to the NDAA. So we need to secure those type of pledges from more members of Congress in this round as well. And just to note that a lot of members of Congress are really susceptible to the arguments that, NEPA is harmful to clean energy as well. And there's just no evidence of that. So we have talking points and, all kind of stuff that we'll link in the chat for y'all. And this is just a tweet to inspire you that this kind of outreach works from Senator Merkley just a couple days ago, where he said, so-called permitting reform designed to expedite fossil fuel projects that tie us to dirty energy for decades to come was a terrible idea last year, and it's still a terrible idea. So amen to that. And we'll hope for more public statements like this. And again, it's going to be very important to reach out to Senator Kaine, especially our Virginians like me, like Jess, because Senator Kaine spoke out really, really helpfully and valuably last time, saying that the MVP provision in the previous iterations of the Manchin bill could open the door to serious abuse and even corruption, which yeah, no joke. So maybe we'll get a stronger statement this year, but we do need his opposition, and I'm going to toss it back to Jess and just thank you all for your continued opposition and your continued collective power. It works, and we're going to do it again.
Grace, thank you for setting out all the ways we can take action this session, this year, to continue to fight at the federal level against efforts to undermine our important critical protections. So today, you're going to be provided with a toolkit. We'll send this to you later. You'll have the recording. Again, I apologize for the technical issues that I contributed to today's program. Thank you, Grace, for handling this. But we want to make some calls. And so we've set up this initial list of folks to prioritize calling. For committee members, we do have their numbers in the toolkit. So what I would ask is that everyone, please get your phone, your cell phone, your landline, get that handy. We're going to make a call together. And I'm going to pull up a script in just a second. But we want to keep that continued pressure on members of Congress, and especially this week in the Senate, to say we will not accept anything that undoes our environmental protections. We will not accept Senator Manchin's Building American Energy Security Act of 2023, and that we are standing with communities that are impacted by the harmful extractive fossil fuel industry. So we've got these numbers, and we can maybe put some of them in the chat too. I think some of them are in the Senate toolkit. But for Virginians on the call today, you can call Senator Kaine, Senator Warner. If you want to mix it up a bit, we want to put some encouragement to those that weighed in last session in opposition to these harmful bills. And thank you, Grace, for putting all of these links in the chat. So that's folks who have spoken out about this issue, like Senator Sanders. We want to make sure Senator Van Hollen in Maryland recognizes how important it is to us this year too, and to have him stay strong on this issue. You can also reach out to Majority Leader Schumer as Senate leadership, or the committee members that have recently heard hearings about these issues or will this week. So again, this week is the Energy and Natural Resources Committee meeting on Thursday. So, all right, who's got their phone handy? I've got mine handy. What I'll do for just a moment is we'll mute. We'll take about 2 minutes together to make a phone call. I'm pulling up a script, so this is a suggestion, but you can modify this any way you want, especially if you're calling, if you're with us today from West Virginia, which I know some of us are. You can call your own senators and just say how disappointed you are in a bill that would harm their own constituents. So yes, please modify this any way you like. But when I make my call today, I'm actually going to call Senator Van Hollen, I think, as a neighboring state. But if you're calling Senator Kaine, Senator Warner, ask them to vote no. You can sort of make a general ask, a broader ask, any bill that would advance a fossil fuel wish list, anything that would deregulate environmental protections. Ask them to vote no on attaching bills to must-pass legislation. We saw that's what Senator Manchin tried to do last time, and it was especially difficult. It puts them in a situation where he's using that as leverage to force them to vote for something. So let's say no, we want must-pass legislation presented as clean bills. And then you can name his bill specifically, the Building American Energy Security Act, say no to that bill. We know weakening environmental protections and weakening community input puts all of us at risk. Mountain Valley Pipeline should not be exempt from the law. So this is a script. I'm going to leave this up. Take a look in the chat to pull a telephone number of someone you want to call. And then we're going to take just about 2 minutes to make a phone call right now. And I'm going to go on mute and you can watch me and Grace make a telephone call. So hope you will join us. And if you're, we'd love to hear how it goes. If you reach a staffer, put it in the chat. Let us know what happened when you made that call, because we'd love to get some feedback on what the offices are telling you. Yeah, so I'm going to go on mute. So let's all make a call together and we'll be right back. All right, folks, let us know how it went in the chat. Some people may have gotten voicemail, you may have gotten someone live. So we're just take another like 15 seconds as we're finishing up those calls, and really appreciate everybody taking part in that. I'll share that I did call Senator Van Hollen's office and was able to leave a message. Grace, what about you? Who'd you call and how'd it go?
Called Senator Kaine's office and asked him to continue his support and left a voicemail.
Excellent. So that's one way we've all just taken action together today. If you've got some time a little bit later today, let's make some more calls. We've got a list that we're sending to you. We've got the toolkit. We need to make calls ahead of that hearing on Thursday. That is critical. Great. Natalie talked to a staffer. That's wonderful. You're able to give direct feedback. So what are the ways we need to take action this week? I mean, we're looking at a similar situation and really battle as last year and last session, when we knew that collective community power stopped the dirty deal. So we are at it again. The ways we can help. Please tune in to, I've got the wrong hearing on there. Please tune in to the Energy and Natural Resources hearing on May 11th. Watch it. Talk about it with friends. Tweet about it. Post on social media. Tag those legislators that are part of this. Another way that we can take action is to write a letter about what you're seeing, what you're hearing at these hearings, and your opposition to Senator Manchin's bill. Letters to the editor are the most popular parts of the paper, and we want to get that info in front of people. We know that elected officials read these. They've got a Google alert set to their name. So when they or their bills are mentioned, they want to know what people are saying, and that's a really helpful way. And we can give you resources for that if you're interested. Talk about this in general on social media. So everybody that just made a call, thank you. Go on social media and say, I just called, and tag them, Senator so-and-so, to let them know I'm opposed to gutting NEPA, gutting the Clean Water Act. Keep this conversation going. And we are super appreciative of all the calls that y'all just made and the feedback that you're sharing with all of us. We've got Senator Warner's staff talk to Senator Kane. We've got people reaching out to Senator Warren. I've reached out to Senator Van Hollen. So we need to continue this week leading into Thursday. And then as all of this is very fluid and does change, we will be providing updates. So look to the POWHR Coalition and their social media and Appalachian Voices for updated information about all of these bills, these efforts. Feel free to reach out to us and keep the conversation going. We want to keep it front of mind for all of these elected officials. And great, reaching out to Senator Manchin's office. Thank you so much, Denny. What else can we do? We are open to ideas here, and we want to hear other ideas for action. So if you've got something, share it with us in the chat. And I also want to take time now, if you have some questions that we didn't cover in our presentation, we will try to answer them. And if we cannot, we will get you that answer as soon as possible. So got a question? Put it into the chat. Got a thought or suggestion of other ways people can take action? Put it into the chat. We really want to hear your feedback and the ways in which you're talking about this. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at this point too. So we've got some really great, okay, so great question. Is Senator Schumer still facilitating the bad bills? Grace, if you want to kick that answer off.
I can take a stab at it. I don't really know the full extent, although we do know that Senator Schumer declared HR 1 dead on arrival, but as far as we know, it's reasonable to assume that he might still have some sort of loyalty or perceived fealty to Senator Manchin, like Biden. And Senator Manchin is now sort of parroting this quote about how he made a deal with the Biden administration as well. So I think that the deal essence is still very much in play. So I would expect Senator Schumer to kind of, let's pressure him. How about I'll put it that way?
Yeah, great point, Grace. We still want to look to leadership to keep the pressure on them. And as we look to some of our environmental justice champions, be on the lookout for what they're doing to help uplift this issue and the other ways we can support their work. You may remember from last session, Representative Grijalva had a fantastic sign-on letter with concerns about the dirty deal. And that was something that really reached a lot of legislators, including some moderates. And so that's a point to move people on. As Grace mentioned in the chat, you can, at the same time you're saying no, vote no to this, you can say, please vote yes, support the Donald McEachin EJ for All Act. That's the type of legislation we want to see that supports communities. And so within the Senate toolkit, Karen, thanks for noticing that we have a script in there. We also have a sort of slightly modified script that we use today. So we'll provide both of those to you afterwards. And yeah, so we're last call for any questions that we might have. And we're getting some great points raised in the chat. Talk about this anywhere and everywhere. This is essentially someone trying to get around the rules for a project that likely impacts where you are, to go around environmental reviews, to minimize state protections, and to get special permission for a pet project for Mountain Valley Pipeline. And that's just completely unacceptable. So raise this with local elected officials. Let them know what's happening. Be in contact with your state delegate and state senator, but keep those calls coming to members of Congress. And with that, I will put it over to Grace for some final comments, but I just want to say thank you so much for making time to be here for this lunchtime action. Apologies again for the technical difficulties, but thank you, Grace, as always, for everything you do. So thank you again for being here. And Grace, I'll put it to you for some final thoughts.
Thanks, Jess, and no need to apologize about the tech issues. We've all been there, and I think it went just fine. And hopefully y'all got some information in this little update here. By no means exhaustive. So, keep reaching out, reach out to us with any questions. Keep your ears and eyes peeled for any sort of lobby day efforts that are forthcoming. We can expect, as this heats up, that there will be opportunities for us to meet with senators and, share our voices in person or virtually. We will keep updating the Senate toolkit. We've been on the run updating it because things change like daily, but that's a resource that you can expect to be perennial. And it also links to the App Voices Action Alert, where you can send an email. So there's a variety of ways to keep pestering folks, and just again, remembering our collective power. And y'all did this, y'all are the reason that we have defeated this before. And so we are going to do it again together. And thanks for taking your lunchtime to work on this.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch very soon with the resources from today's program. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.